Welcome to Wildly Capable with Kate, a podcast made for those looking to unleash their wildest capabilities. I'm your host, Kate Durocher, a dating, relationship, and self-worth coach on a mission to help people build better relationships, starting with the one they have with themselves. In each episode, we'll dig deep, turn inwards, and embark on a transformative journey. Together, we'll break free from unhealthy patterns, rip through self-limiting beliefs, heal past wounds, and build unwavering self-worth, all to create healthier relationships as a result. Get ready to explore the wild, untapped potential within you. Are you ready to see just how wildly capable you are? Subscribe now and join us on this empowering adventure. Remember, your wildest capabilities await. Is your relationship avoidance or anxiety preventing you from having the love life that you desire? Let's talk about it. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Wildly Capable with Kate. I'm Kate, your host, and today we're talking about something that I talk about with pretty much everybody I know and all of my clients: attachment styles. I'm going to break them down for you, and I'm going to explain how they're showing up in your relationships as an adult, how they may be harming them, and what you can do about it, what you can do to heal those attachment styles if you need to. But before we get into all that, I want to let you all know that I'm currently taking on new clients for dating, relationship, and self-worth coaching. I coach people who are going through heartbreaks. I coach people who want to build healthier relationships. I coach people who are in a relationship already and want to make it better. I'm here for you through every season of your relational journey. And I would love to come alongside you as you build better relationships, starting specifically and especially with the relationship that you have with yourself. I offer full coaching programs, ongoing coaching after you graduate from one of my programs, and if you're not ready for an actual program, I also offer breakthrough sessions. Breakthrough sessions are 2-hour-long calls where we dive in as deeply as we possibly can to everything that's going on in your love life and in your relationships and within yourself. I'll give you my all during those 2 hours, and we will do everything that we can to help you have that breakthrough that you're looking for. If you're interested in starting coaching, head to my website, coachkatedurocher.com, fill out my coaching application, and then I will reach out to you to set up a call and we'll chat through all of your options. I'm really excited to meet you, so please fill out the application. Please reach out. Shoot me a DM if you have any questions, and we will get started. It's going to be amazing. Okay, so back to attachment styles. First of all, attachment styles have become a lot more popular in the past, I'd say probably 10 years. I really started learning about them roughly 5 years ago, and I've studied them intensely. Studying attachment styles has really helped me understand myself and anybody that I get into a relationship with, whether it's a romantic relationship with my family or just with friends. Attachment styles can help you understand and create better relationships no matter what the format is, no matter what type of relationship it is. So to start, let me explain what attachment styles are. There are 4 main types of attachment styles: anxious, avoidant, disorganized, and secure. So anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. Those are the 3 attachment styles that are wounded, that need some work. We are always trying to move towards secure. Secure attachment style is kind of the goal, if you will. Not that any of us who don't have a secure style are broken or need fixing. It's simply an area of our lives that we maybe could start to pay attention to. Attachment theory is a psychological theory that explains how humans attach to other people around them. And it specifically starts in childhood with your earliest caregivers, your parents or whoever raised you. That's kind of when your attachment style forms. And then you carry it with you throughout the rest of your life. And it can change, it can heal, it can get triggered again. Your attachment style is not fixed. It may change and look different over time. But each of the 4 different attachment styles stems from something different. So let's start with anxious attachment style. Anxious attachment style is formed in childhood or throughout your early life when you are surrounded by people who sometimes are there for you and sometimes they're not. So sometimes you could go to your parents or your caregiver and they would be there for you and they would give you emotional support. And other times they were absent or they just weren't in tune with you. You never really knew what you were going to get from them. Maybe sometimes they were volatile, other times they were really loving. It was kind of like a high and a low. You never knew what to expect. And so the result of that is that it created anxiety within you. You become very perceptive of other people's emotions. You are constantly reading the room to see, like, a pulse check on other people to see how they're feeling, because you had to do that as a kid. You had to pay attention to how your parent or whoever you were going to for emotional or physical support was feeling to determine if you could go to them during that time or not. So a lot of times somebody with an anxious attachment style, and speaking from experience, can seem to be very just like empathetic, able to read the room. We call ourselves empaths because we can so easily pick up on the emotions of other people. And sure, maybe some of us are empaths, but others of us are just responding to trauma from our childhoods. And it's a skill that we've built to protect ourselves over time. As adults, anxious attachment style shows up in a lot of different ways. For example, if you feel somebody that you're in a relationship with pulling away from you, like they're not as consistent in their communication, they don't seem as excited to see you, they're not contacting you as much, things like that. If you feel like they're pulling away, you become anxious. You start to freak out. You are constantly trying to determine if the relationship is good or not, if the other person still feels the same about you or not. And so when you sense something's different, you become heightened. Your attachment style gets triggered. Your attachment wound gets triggered. And that can look like you freaking out in different ways, like contacting them a bunch, texting them a lot, resorting to what we call protest behaviors. Protest behaviors are the actions you take to regain closeness with somebody. So like the texting a bunch, contacting them, playing games to see if they still like you. You do all these things just to see if that person is still interested, or if they are still there for you, or if they still care about you, love you. You're doing what you think you need to do to protect yourself, to make sure everything's good. But oftentimes it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and those protest behaviors end up pushing that person away. You know, for example, think about it. If a guy were to call you 30 times in a row, you'd probably get freaked out and like block his number. You wouldn't want to talk to him again. And speaking from experience, again, I have done that. I have had my attachment style triggered, and I have resorted to protest behaviors by reaching out to the guy or the other person a bunch just to make sure that they were going to respond to me, just to make sure that they weren't ghosting me, or they weren't with another girl, or they didn't lose interest in me. Those were the behaviors I exhibited before I healed my attachment style. And what did it do? With the wrong people, it did not regain closeness. It didn't make them come back towards me. It pushed them away even further. So, anxious attachment in adulthood can definitely not only harm your relationships, cause them to become fractured and push the other person away, scare the other person off, but they're also really difficult for you. When you have an anxious attachment style and somebody is a little hot and cold, or you can't read them, it feels like torture. If you can't get a hold of your partner, you literally inside feel like you're on fire, like you can hardly stand it. It feels really, really challenging. It hurts. And unless you are with a safe partner who either isn't triggering that anxiety in you, or who knows how to handle your anxiety, it's only going to get worse and worse until you learn how to take care of it yourself and remove yourself from any relationship that isn't safe. Your anxious attachment doesn't always just come from you. Sometimes the other person is doing things that warrant you being anxious. When somebody pulls away, when somebody doesn't message you back, when somebody is unclear, anybody would feel anxious over that, not just somebody with an anxious attachment style. So there is a difference between anxious attachment style and just having relationship anxiety, and I will explain more of that later. Okay, let's move on to the second type of attachment style, avoidant attachment style. I can kind of guarantee that a lot of you listening to this podcast lean towards more of an anxious attachment style, and the people that you date tend to be more avoidant. How do I know that? I know that because somebody with an anxious attachment style, like I said, wants to do anything they can to make sure the relationship is good. So that often includes coaching, getting a therapist, listening to podcasts like this. Somebody with an avoidant attachment style does exactly what it sounds like. They avoid intimacy. They avoid closeness. They are the exact opposite of somebody with an anxious attachment style. So somebody who's avoidant, unless they are becoming aware that they somebody who's avoidant, unless they are becoming aware that they're avoidant, probably isn't going to listen to these sorts of like self-help, educational, relationship healing type podcasts or books, or listen to coaches or seek out help, because they don't, the closeness, the intimacy, the getting to know somebody more feels terrifying to them. Absolutely terrifying. And avoidant attachment style is formed similar to anxious attachment style in your early years as a child with your earliest caregivers. And it can also be brought on through like early life experiences or difficult relationships. But basically, it's when the child could not turn to their parent or caregiver at all for support, at all for emotional attunement or safety. Somebody with an avoidant attachment style learned very early on that they had to take care of themselves, physically, emotionally, mentally, everything. They could only rely on themselves. So they become hyper independent, because the times that they did turn to somebody else, that other person did not show up for them. Either they were emotionally shut down themselves, didn't know how to handle the child's emotions, or quite literally were not around. They were absent. So somebody with an avoidant attachment style learns to rely on themselves and themselves only, and they end up not seeking help or closeness or connection with other people because they were taught that it's unsafe to do that. They were taught that the other person won't be there, so they might as well rely on themselves anyway. Somebody with an avoidant attachment style in adulthood, that looks like being hyper independent, not independent in a way that is necessary for all of us to be able to care for ourselves and step up for ourselves, but hyper independent in the sense that they don't need you. They don't let you into their world. They're very private. They run away if you ask them questions about themselves, especially intimate questions. In relationship, they cannot get close to somebody else. Feeling like an emotional closeness with someone, emotional intimacy, it's absolutely so scary for somebody who's avoidant. It's the same way somebody with anxious attachment style gets really scared when somebody is, being distant or like pulling away. Somebody with an avoidant attachment style gets really scared, really triggered, really heightened when somebody is coming closer to them. So avoidant attachment style, anxious attachment style, and disorganized, which I'm about to get into, they all desire the same thing. Deep down, we all desire love and connection and safety, security, romance. We all desire very similar things. But our attachment styles cause us to either push it away or not accept it in different ways. Same desire, different outcome. So that's what avoidant attachment style looks like. And in relationships, it can be really damaging because it causes the other person to feel isolated and like they don't know you and like you don't even like them to begin with. Oftentimes, the avoidant person and the anxious person, they meet and they start dating and they fall in love and they trigger each other's wounds to an extreme, to the point where sometimes it can get really toxic unless they are both aware of it and working on it. Because the avoidant can't give to the anxious person what the anxious person needs, and the anxious person is so desperately trying to give to the avoidant what they need, but the avoidant will not allow it. This has also been described as sort of the chaser runner dynamic. Jillian Turecki has a really amazing podcast that describes it. It's very similar to the avoidant anxious dynamic, but I love the way that she uses different words to frame it, because like I said, when I was describing anxious, it's not always that you're avoidant. Maybe it's that relationship dynamic is causing you to be more avoidant. Or maybe something recently happened that's got you like in your head and scared, so you're shutting down. Sometimes it's not coming from the attachment style, not coming from childhood, and just coming from whatever's going on in your life or that relationship at the time. But for the sake of this podcast, I'm going to call it anxious and avoidant and keep explaining the attachment styles to you. Okay, moving on to disorganized attachment. Disorganized attachment is also known as fearful avoidant. Both of those terms are used interchangeably. And disorganized attachment is one that wasn't as studied when attachment theory first came about, but now it's becoming more popularly recognized. And disorganized attachment is a mixture of avoidant and anxious, where sometimes the person craves closeness and other times they withdraw from it. It scares them. Disorganized attachment is formed in childhood through childhood trauma. So disorganized attachment is a little bit more serious than anxious or avoidant. It comes from really difficult childhood experiences. Maybe a parent who was an alcoholic, childhood abuse, really just challenging, painful, heartbreaking things like that. So somebody with a disorganized attachment, they actually have to heal trauma. All attachment styles do have to address like their traumas and their triggers and the difficult experiences that they had when they were kids. But for disorganized attachment, it goes a little bit of a layer deeper. And I would recommend seeing a trauma specialist if you resonate with this style. If you flip-flop between being anxious and avoidant, and often you do it rapidly, sometimes in the same paragraph or the same conflict with your partner, that probably points towards having a disorganized style. And it can heal, just like all the other ones. It can absolutely be healed, but it'll just take some trauma work underneath to get to the root cause and then heal from there. So disorganized attachment is a mixture of the both. Sometimes the person, for example, I can actually give an example in my own life. I resonate a lot with disorganized attachment because sometimes when I'm in a conflict with my partner, I will push them away and I will tell Bobby to leave the room or we're over, I'm not doing this anymore, yada, yada. I'm very heightened in those moments. I'm very triggered in those moments. And then an hour later, I'll be upset and hurt that he actually did leave the room or he did end the conversation like I was telling him to. So I flip-flop between avoidant and anxious all in one conflict. And that's really challenging both for the person who's experiencing it and the person on the receiving end, because you're extremely confused both internally and what you're portraying externally. You say one thing, you want the other thing, you do something different, you're constantly flip-flopping. So it's really challenging and it can definitely harm relationships for that exact reason, because you give the other person mixed signals, you tell them different things, they don't know how to show up for you because you don't even know how to show up for yourself. So disorganized attachment, it looks like that. It looks like oscillating between the two styles over and over and not really knowing what you need to feel safe. But like all the attachment styles, good news is that it can be healed. It can be worked through. It can be improved. And I know in my own life, I've definitely gone back and forth between the two styles. I've tended to lean more anxious. Like I said, I've definitely texted men when I thought they were pulling away from me. And oftentimes they were doing harmful things. So my intuition was spot on, but still I tend to lean towards anxious and sometimes I can be disorganized at the same time. I have done a lot of work to release that from myself. I've done a lot of work to stop wearing attachment styles as my identity. I've done a lot of work to understand them and to heal them and to not give in to the triggers when I'm feeling them. And I can say today that I really resonate more so with being securely attached. And securely attached, like I said at the start of this episode, is kind of what we're all moving towards. It's where you feel safe with closeness and with distance. It's where you're able to be independent, but can also rely on somebody else. It's where you're kind of in the middle. You're in a safe and secure spot. And people with secure attachment, they were raised in a home where they could go to their parents, they could rely on their parents, and their parent also allowed them to be their own autonomous person. It's kind of the childhood that we all would love to have had. I would say very few people did have that childhood. And like I said, that's okay. You can move more towards secure at any stage in your attachment style. So just want to say that so you don't lose hope. Secure can also always be attained. All right, now that you understand the 4 different attachment styles, why on earth do we even talk about this? Why is this something important to know about yourself? Well, like I kind of explained with each different style, depending on what it is, it can show up in your adult relationships in different ways. And our attachment styles, they run on autopilot until we become aware of them. I had no idea that attachment styles were a thing up until I was probably 25. So my anxious attachment style was constantly happening in the background when I sensed, that my relationship was shifting or that the person was pulling away. My anxiety would become really prevalent. And I wasn't aware that I was actually experiencing relationship anxiety, that I had an anxious attachment style until I read the book Attached. And it was like light bulb moment. Oh my gosh, everything makes so much sense now. I'm not crazy. I simply have something I need to heal. Now I understand why I behave the way that I do and why when somebody isn't totally available to me or isn't responding in the way that I think they should, why it feels so unsafe to me. And by becoming aware that my anxious attachment style even existed, I could then start to slowly but surely change it. So our attachment styles, if you are unaware of them, I can almost guarantee that they are running the show in the background of your relationships and of how you feel about yourself without you even knowing it. So awareness is key to start to change them. Let this podcast, this episode, be the awareness you need to then just Google what attachment styles are. There's quizzes you can take to understand which style you tend to lean more towards, or just which style you're leaning more towards currently. Because like I said, it can change. They can change depending on your environment, the relationship you're in, who you're dating, what their style is. If you're going through a specific season in your life, they can change. They are not fixed. I would say we tend to lean more towards one, but they're still not fixed. They really can change. I have been avoidant in different relationships. For example, there was this guy that I saw, very loosely saw back in 2021-ish. And he was so anxious, so constantly pursuing me, constantly texting me, constantly trying to see me in a overdone way, in a way that wasn't healthy, that it pushed me away and I became really avoidant. I didn't want to see his name on my phone. I didn't want to answer. I didn't want to talk to him. And outside of that, he was a great guy. He would have given me the things that I was desiring, but his constant anxiety put on me made me push away and become avoidant, which was really rare for me. Normally, I lean more towards anxious. So all that to say that you can have different styles show up in different circumstances. But you need to be aware of what that style may be, of what tendency may be coming out. So that way you can recognize in your relationships if your behaviors are stemming from those things. If your anxiety is coming from your childhood, if your avoidance and pushing people away is coming from the past, you need to be aware so this stops running on autopilot. And so you can actually choose how you want to show up instead of just responding from your old childhood wounds, instead of just responding from a hurt place. Instead, choose how you want to respond, choose how you want to show up in the relationship from a place of health and empowerment. What that looks like, for example, is say Bobby isn't responding to me. He's out with some friends and I can't get a hold of him. It'd be easy for me to jump to my old childhood wounds, my old patterns of reaching out, of contacting him a bunch, of getting angry with him, of getting heightened. That is the easy thing that my brain will go to because it's what my brain has taught me it needed to do in the past. But instead of allowing it to run on autopilot, I am now able to pause, slow down, say, oh, you're just going back to your old ways. You're feeling anxiety that you don't actually need to be feeling. And I'm able to comfort myself. I'm able to sit in the discomfort that I'm feeling and then choose how I want to respond. And I respond by calming myself, by regulating my nervous system, by giving to myself the thing that I am seeking in the other person, seeking from my fiance. So that looks like doing something I love, taking a bubble bath, breathing techniques to move through the anxiety, things like that. And the more and more that I choose how I respond to my attachment style, instead of letting it control me, the more and more I heal that wound, the more and more I heal that pattern. I teach all of my clients that really all healing is giving yourself, your brain and your body and your heart something better to turn to when you are feeling unsafe or you are perceiving you're feeling unsafe. If you're actually unsafe, yes, you need to be anxious and you need to listen to that anxiety and you need to get out of there. But if you are just perceiving it based on your old triggers, your old traumas, your old wounds, then you can calm yourself and choose a different behavior, choose a different reaction. That is why becoming aware of your attachment style is so important, because it really can make our relationships extremely challenging until we start to choose better behavior, until we start to choose to have the hard conversations instead of just sweeping it under the rug, until we choose to not let our anxiety run the ship and cause us to do different things that both embarrass us and push the other person away. Our attachment styles can prevent us from having the safe, secure, exciting, loving, respectful, trusting relationships that so many of us, especially the people listening to podcasts like these, are longing for. But you can heal them. So let's talk about how we can move from avoidant or anxious to more secure. And how I talk about moving from avoidant or anxious to more secure applies to disorganized attachment style too. But just remember the caveat that disorganized attachment comes from some deep-seated childhood trauma. So you also need to be working with a trauma specialist at the same time. Get a trauma-informed therapist to help you work through those things. But okay, let's talk first about anxious attachment. How do you heal your anxious attachment style? The first way to heal your anxious attachment style is to learn to sit in the discomfort. Like the example that I just gave with my fiance, when you start to get heightened, don't allow yourself to respond to it. Don't allow yourself to reach out, to text a bunch, to freak out. Sit in the discomfort. Turn inwards, turn towards yourself, and allow yourself to feel the difficult emotions that are coming up. You don't need to ignore them. You don't need to push them aside. You don't need to bury them. That will only make them stronger. You need to feel them and honor them, but not react based off of them. Because while our feelings are always valid, they aren't always true. So when I start to feel extremely anxious, I need to honor myself. I need to feel it, but it doesn't mean that my anxiety is founded in truth. It doesn't mean that I need to react to that anxiety. So sit in the discomfort. Feel it, let it move through you, release it, cry, maybe like scream into a pillow, paint, turn towards healthy activities like walk your dog, get outside, paint, play music, things like that. Choose healthier reactions to let the emotion out. And on top of that, become aware of whether your anxiety is coming from something that's actually happening or if it's coming from your old wounds and patterns. There is a difference. And I think sometimes with anxious attachment style, there is a risk because we tell ourselves like, oh my gosh, this is just coming from the past. It's coming from the past. I shouldn't be feeling this. And then we end up making ourselves feel a lot of shame and guilt because we can't seem to release the anxiety. But in reality, sometimes it really is coming from something that the other person is doing. Maybe the other person actually is doing something harmful or shady or manipulative. Maybe they actually aren't there for you. In those cases, your anxiety is true and it's warning you and your intuition is speaking up. So you need to sit with yourself and figure out, is this coming from a past wound, a past pattern, maybe a past breakup, maybe something with my mom or my dad that I still need to address from my childhood? Or is this coming from the relationship dynamic and I need to address it? I need to have a conversation, or I need to pick myself up and leave. Become aware of the difference because there is a difference. Sometimes your anxiety is true. Another thing I really recommend for somebody with an anxious attachment style is to find your emergency people. People you can reach out to when you are really struggling, who will talk you down, who will calm you, who will remind you that you are safe, you are okay. Maybe it's a mentor, a coach, a therapist, your best friends, but choose somebody who is even healthier and wiser than you. Because if you turn to people who are also wounded, they're going to tell you to react in harmful ways. They're going to make you feel even worse. So be very wise with who you go to and only go to somebody who's been where you've been and who has gotten out of it. You want somebody who is already where you want to be, not somebody who is also struggling with it, because you're not going to be able to get a healthy piece of advice or wisdom from that person because they're also responding out of their own wounds too. So find people you can turn to, but choose those people wisely. All right. And what about avoidant attachment style? How do we heal avoidant attachment style and start to become more secure? Healing avoidant attachment is very similar to anxious, where when you feel like running away or shutting down or pushing the other person away because the intimacy, the emotional intimacy is becoming too real, or they're getting to know you too much, or they are relying on you more than what you perceive as safe, you need to challenge yourself. You need to, again, sit in the discomfort. And instead of allowing yourself to just shut down or run away or choose the easy thing, choose the hard thing and lean in. Lean in small ways. Slowly build intimacy. Like maybe that looks like not leaving the conversation when you want to. Maybe it looks like not hanging up the phone when you feel like it's getting too emotional or too close. Not, ignoring the other person or pushing them away because they are seeking co-regulation from you. That's all normal. That's good. That's healthy, as long as it's not in a way that they are depending on you, but it's both of you coming together. That's a good thing. So lean in when you feel like leaning out, when you feel like leaving. Something that's really helpful is instead of just going to your partner and trying to share with them how you're feeling, because that feels really scary for somebody who's avoidant. That feels like it's way too much. It even feels like a little like gross and icky. Instead, write down what you're feeling and then either send it to the person, show it to them, or read it to them, because that feels a lot less emotional. You're just reading, you're stating whatever you wrote. That's a great way for you to start to get comfortable with sharing your emotions and allowing somebody else to share their emotions with you in return. Start small, because if you try to just dive right into emotional intimacy and closeness, it's going to be too much for you and you're going to shut down and you're going to leave. So take baby steps, but keep taking them. Keep leaning in more and more and more with time. And on top of that, internally, you need to start becoming more aware of your own emotions. Work on emotional awareness. Somebody with an avoidant attachment style isn't even in tune with their own emotions because they were taught that they can't be, that they just had to keep it pushing. They just had to pick themselves up, take care of themselves. So they don't even know their own emotions, let alone try to understand yours. So if you have an avoidant attachment style, start to slowly but surely become friends with your emotions. Become aware of your emotions. Name them. Whatever you're feeling, try to pause and say, I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling bitter. I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling threatened. Give a name to your emotion so you can start to just become aware of them. And that will build more and more with time. That will become more natural. But emotional awareness, becoming in tune with your emotions, is so necessary for somebody with an avoidant attachment style, because you can't be in tune with somebody else's emotions if you're not in tune with your own. So build emotional awareness. And last but not least, for avoidant attachment style, challenge your limiting beliefs. Somebody with an avoidant attachment often has all of these mindsets and beliefs going on in the background on autopilot in their head. Those thoughts often sound like, I don't need anybody else. I'm good on my own. Everybody else's emotions are too much. Like, we are good. I can take care of myself. Those are kind of the thoughts that go on in the background in somebody's mind who struggles with an avoidant attachment style. So what you can do is you can become aware of those thoughts, just like you're becoming aware of your emotions, and then literally challenge them with yourself. Say, is that true? Do you actually not need anyone at all? Do you not want anyone at all? Maybe that feels safe, but I'm guessing you do want somebody to be there for you. Everybody does. So challenge yourself. When the thought comes up, change it, rewrite it, ask yourself if it's actually true, or if you're just believing it because you're feeling threatened and scared and like you want to shut down. Challenge yourself. Challenge those thoughts. So that's what somebody with an avoidant style can do. Emotional awareness, slowly lean in and slowly build emotional connection, build emotional intimacy, and challenge your own thoughts. For somebody with a disorganized attachment, it's really all of the above that I just said. Both the avoidance and the anxious need to be worked through with somebody with a disorganized attachment. But on top of that, like I said, there needs to be therapy happening. There needs to be trauma-informed therapy specifically happening. You need a specialist who can help you understand what you endured as a child or as a young adult and then be able to work through it. So find somebody safe, find a safe space to process these emotions, a specialist, a trained professional, and begin to work through them while you start to do the other tools that I just named for you. So there you have it. That's how you can start to heal your attachment style and move more towards secure. But why do that? Why do all of that work? Well, honestly, you guys, you won't have the beautiful, lasting, healthy relationship that you desire if you don't. Because you will either constantly resort to your old patterns of pushing somebody away or pulling them in more closely, which in return pushes them away. You will continue to resort to your wounded inner child. You will act just like you would if you were still that 5, 6, 7-year-old version of yourself. You won't handle things in the best way possible. And it will be an uphill battle in your relationships until you learn healthier tactics, healthier behaviors, how to handle your own emotions and work through them. A healthy, lasting relationship needs to be built on a strong foundation. And that means not allowing your old things to get into the mix. They're going to get into the mix no matter what. And in the right relationship, in a safe relationship, you will be given the space to grow, just like you need to give the other person the space to grow too. But it will be hard to even get into that safe relationship if you are running on autopilot and allowing your old wounds, your old attachment style to run the show. So heal. Heal for yourself today. Heal for your future. Heal for your future family so your kids don't have to have these attachment styles. Give to them what maybe you were not given. Give them that secure relationship. Give them emotional attunement. But you won't be able to give them that if you don't give it to yourself first. So heal for your future. Heal for yourself so you can feel more secure within, so you can feel healthier within, so your nervous system doesn't have to feel unsafe or triggered. Heal for yourself today. Heal for your future relationship. Heal for your future self. Heal for your future family. That's why you need to do this work. That's why you need to face it head on and dive in. It is some of the most important work that you will do for yourself and for your relationships. And it is beautiful, powerful, rewarding work. Take it from me. If you are ready to start to address these things, then coaching is for you. I owe so much of who I am today to my mentors, to my coaches, to the people who actually had the tools and awareness that I didn't to help guide me to where I wanted to be, where I wanted to go. And I know if you are listening to this podcast, you want the same things that I wanted back then. You want to feel better internally. You want to love yourself more. You want a healthy relationship, a lasting relationship. You want marriage. You want security, safety, a family someday. Those things will be so much harder to achieve and to attain if you don't start to address what is going on internally. If you don't start to heal your anxious or avoidant attachment style. Those things that you are dreaming of and longing for, it will be much harder to reach them if you don't start to address what's going on internally. If you don't start to heal your attachment style. Coaching is an incredible, incredible tool to help you do exactly that. In coaching, you not only gain the awareness you need, but you also are given the tools and the techniques to start to change the outcome, to start to change the behavior. If you are ready, if you are interested in coaching, if you want your story to be like mine, where you moved from one attachment style to another and built the beautiful relationship that you were longing for, head to my website, CoachKateDurocher.com, fill out my coaching application, and then I will reach out to you to set up a call. I am telling you, this is some of the most important, powerful work you can do for your life. It is necessary work that really all of us need to explore. So head to my website. You can also DM me on Instagram. My Instagram and my TikTok handle are both at Coach Kate Durocher. Reach out to me and we'll chat, and I will explain to you how coaching works, what your different options are, and what might be best for you. So head to my website, fill out the application, and we will set up a call. Thank you all so much for listening in. I am so excited to meet you, and it just means the world to me that you tune in week after week. This podcast is such a gift to myself and a gift to the world, and I hope that you all enjoy it. So until next time, I am Kate, and this is Wildly Capable with Kate. I'll see you all soon.